Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Tuesday, July 5th, 2:30 p.m. Hope everybody had a fantastic 4th of July weekend. Hope it was safe, healthy, happy, fulfilling. Lots of food, lots of barbecue, lots of beverages. Not too many. A lot of us had to get to work on Tuesday, but lots of fireworks going on leading into the 4th of July. The USC and UCLA news. I know we talked about it here. Had the weekend to kind of think about it. Obviously, we're going to spend a little bit more time from the Ohio State side of things here on the Big Me Kickoff. For those of you who saw my other show, the Best Noon Sports Show period on my previous channel, great. For those who don't know about it, be sure to find it. I will link to it in the description when I'm done with the show. Again, trying to keep the shows a little separate from one another since they're on different channels, but this is the main show right here. This is the show I put my time into. The other show is a little bit more fun, but the other show is also an opportunity for me to keep my channel active, and I think that's important to do. Spend a lot of time building that one up. Hate to see it kind of fade on me, so give it a look. Let's say hello to everybody who's online. We already have 11 thumbs up. For those of you who haven't had a chance to yet or are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell, thumbs up, all that good stuff. It sure helps us out. It also keeps you in touch with all the shows that we put out on the channel, which includes Gives in the Bank, Around the Oval with Alex Gleitman, The Morning Scoop, Buckeye Weekly, etc., etc., etc. So I like to make sure that we have all of that set up. So go through a couple comments as we say hellos, and we'll get to it. Steve jumping in. I think we're talking about Notre Dame. A lot of talk there, and we will talk about that because that does affect Ohio State. That is Ohio State's first opponent of the season. But, and we know here in 23, there's no chance that that's going to be a conference game. Could that be a conference game in 24? Does the back end of that schedule get torn up if we see immediate chaos and upheaval with SC and UCLA set to come on the Big Ten schedule and start conference play in 24? Could other programs move that quickly? We'll get into timelines and things like that. And again, there's a whole lot of, we don't know. I mean, it's not a matter of anybody really knows anything at this point. I don't think conference commissioners and university presidents and ADs know right now. I don't think that there is an impending announcement that people are sitting on. And I will tell a story before I kind of get to some comments. And I don't know if I got into it last week during the show. I got tipped off from somebody about 7 minutes before the news broke. 7 whole minutes. I thought about it for 2. Maybe 10. Because I went and I looked back at my receipts. I looked at my text messages and everything else. And I reached out to Tom and Tony. And it's like, hey, seeing this, hearing this, thoughts. And, we have a very active text channel between ourselves. We have to in order to do this right. And it's like, well, we should probably consider doing a show. I was like, yeah, I agree. And, we should probably be prepared. We never really made it much further in the conversation than that because then all hell broke loose and there we were. And then we knew with the holiday weekend that we weren't going to see a lot of news. I mean, a lot of, Notre Dame would prefer to remain independent. Well, I would prefer to have my hair back. I mean, I would prefer to be 180, not 280. I mean, what you prefer and what you dealt are two different things. So, a lot going on there. But let me get through the comments because once again, this is your show, especially when I do this live. When I tape it, you don't have a lot of impact on what I talk about, what I do, etc., how long the show goes. I'm really going to try and keep this one to 60 minutes. We're supposed to have a couple of contractors come through the house about 4 o'clock. I want to make sure I'm free and clear in case I get here early. So I'm going to try and keep this one at 60. We'll see how that does. We'll kind of go through, I guess we're still having some more things in terms of talking about Notre Dame. They remain special in their own minds. Absolutely. Staying independent is going to make schools like Illinois and Vanderbilt have more money than Notre Dame, and that's stone prepper. I agree, and I can go a little further down into the comments, but I want to stop there for a minute because the Notre Dame national deal is not all of that lucrative. The best part about it is that they don't share the money, but they're not going to be making $75 million a year on their rights deals. I mean, when you put the NBC deal and then what they're getting for the ACC part of it, they're way behind. So you end up having schools like Illinois, like Rutgers, like Vanderbilt, like Missouri, who are in these major conferences and are going to be benefiting from the overall group. They've got golden tickets at this point. Vanderbilt, good at baseball. Rutgers, has been doing okay at some stuff. I think that the basketball program's a program on the rise. Football is doing better. I think that there's a chance that they could get up to being a 500 team. Illinois goes out, gets Brett Bielema. They're not quite there yet. So on and so forth. And then Notre Dame wants to remain independent. Everybody's like, well, they don't need the money. Oh, everybody needs the money. Nobody's out there doing it for the love. You need to have the money. The money makes it happen. And, people get lost in talking about the endowment of a school. And, this means that. Well, that's not exactly what the athletic budget is. You can't sit there and say, well, because of this pool of money, they don't need that money. They need all the money. It's getting expensive. So I think that we're seeing some posturing right now. I think we're seeing a case of where Notre Dame certainly wants to appease the traditionalists who see independence as their DNA. But in doing so, they still have to keep giving the signals that, hey, we're in this we're in this for the long run. We're in this for, long-term success. And honestly, long-term success is going to reside in conference affiliation. And that's not getting into, the talks of the SEC having their own playoffs. And of course, now people are like, well, the Big Ten should have its own playoffs. And, I just think that even if we see an expanded playoff field inclusive of everybody, does Notre Dame's access is it diminished with the way that these conferences are going to be set up? If you have 16 or 20 or 24 team conferences, is the only path to that tournament, because it'll be kind of a tournament at that point, is to run through those conferences? Notre Dame has always been able to kind of sit out there and do its own thing and play Navy and play Boston College and play USC and play two teams out of the Big Ten and whatever. And as long as they haven't tanked, they're going to be in some sort of access bowl, some sort of New Year's Six, whatever the flavor of the week, whatever the nomenclature is at that point. That's where Notre Dame's going to be. If that starts to go away, coupled with the money, you can love independence all you want. You're going to be independent sitting there by yourself at the end of December, early January, not part of the deal. And then we'll still have some Notre Dame fans that'll be like, well, that doesn't matter. We're Notre Dame. We're bigger than national championships. Well, you can enjoy that and hang every banner you want on that. That doesn't mean anything. And, I'm sure we got a lot of this. I'm not being very good about getting to comments. It's already, I'm only 10 minutes into the show and I'm way behind. So I apologize for that. But I was reading some interesting stuff from Joel Klatt, great color commentator for Fox Sports on their A team for their Big Ten coverage largely. He's done some PAC as well. And, his belief was that if Notre Dame doesn't come together, I'm paraphrasing, so if I don't get it all right, I apologize. I don't have it in front of me. Basically that you could see some sort of scheduling agreement between the Big Ten and Notre Dame. I'm like, no, the absolute opposite of it. If you give Notre Dame access to all of that, what incentive do they have? They can still screw around and be independent, whatever the heck it is they want, and still play all the games and still be able to tell recruits within an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, you're going to play all of these games on the road that are going to be in your neighborhood. If Notre Dame doesn't want to play, you cut them off. You're done. You instruct your members, all of them. You do not schedule Notre Dame any further. If you truly believe that this is a case of that the Big Ten has been chasing Notre Dame around the schoolyard like a couple of elementary school kids, wanting to have that first kiss. You can't sit there and keep coddling Notre Dame and saying, okay, well, we're going to just sit there, whatever you want. I mean, they're Notre Dame fans. And I say this with a giant dose of reality. Social media is not a true barometer of where fans are at. It's not. A lot of great fans of every program, every institution on social. We don't remember the reasonable ones. We remember the crazy ones. And there are a lot of people out there that think that Notre Dame should be able to name its price and put a shamrock in the logo and change the colors to green and gold or whatever the hell. No, you come in under the current climate. And that doesn't mean, oh, we're going to haze you. We're going to make you go out on meal runs for us during president's meetings. We're going to paddle your rear end. No, I mean, maybe on the field, but none of that's going to be there. But you cannot just sit there and say, okay, well, we're going to give you all of this. You got to come in under the normal circumstances. And I understand what a big fish Notre Dame is in terms of the perceptions and what the dollar figures may be, even though Notre Dame doesn't have a huge media deal right now, but it certainly should warrant it. It doesn't turn 2x ratings from everybody out there. It just doesn't happen. We talked about that on the last show, so I don't want to get too far into that one as well. But I don't know if you sit there and completely sell out to bring them there. And if it doesn't happen at this point, you're done with them. You're done with them under the current structure. They're done. You delete the number out of your phone. I know it's going to hurt, but you got to rip the Band-Aid off and be done with it. Be done with it. It's done. Not, well, we'll circle back in 5 years. We're giving you 4 weeks. 4 weeks to get your blank together. You're either in or you're out. And I know I talked about on a previous show, and I was on Sirius XM Big Ten Channel 372 with Anthony Herron and Jason Horowitz this morning, and I used the analogy, and it was I think it was also a title of a Better Call Saul episode, carrot or the stick. You might want to sit there and be a little bit more carrot and a little less stick when you're negotiating with Notre Dame, but at the end of the day, you've got to sit there and say, we've got to be able to move forward, because we're not going to sit around and dance. You may be a beautiful girl at the dance, but there are a lot of other beautiful girls out there, and we're just not going to sit there and take with this. Because if you sit there and you keep taking it, you're going to be married to somebody that's just going to have these horribly unrealistic expectations. So I'll take a pause on that one and get to your questions as we kind of go on. I do want to talk about 2023 recruiting. I was asked about that on my other show. I said I was going to kick it over to this show. Again, trying to keep the two shows somewhat separate. It's only fair to make sure that they're not carbon copies of one another, that there's some defined lines between what one show is and what the other show is. Devin saying, let's go. Florida Buckeye in with a good old IO. Lewis Pap, I just heard from GBD that Indy turned the Big Ten down again. I'm not sure who GBD is, so maybe that's in there in the comments. I'm way behind on the comments based on where the counter is, so we'll start flying through these. If I don't get your comment up there, I apologize. I've got to get caught up, because if not, I'm going to be chasing the dragon this entire show, and we're never going to get there. So I'm going to get through here more. Jay Moore, kind of hope they do, but I don't think they will until the Big Ten and SEC decide to have playoffs amongst themselves, and Indy leverage is all gone. and they'll have to. Yeah, I mean, you've got to sit there and say that there's no path forward for you to sit there and live in this. You can sit there and claim the South Bend Touchdown Club national championship every year. Great, but you've got to exclude Notre Dame from your little reindeer games if you want them to have to come to the table. I mean, I'm trying so hard not to go back and use. I mean, it's like dating. You know, if you're getting little hot makeout sessions all the time, you're not going to have to get married because you're getting hot little makeout sessions. So what's the point? What's the point? So you've got to freeze them out. You've got to freeze them out. And it's really easy for me to sit there and say that right now as Notre Dame is on Ohio State's schedule in 22 and 23. I get it. But you've got to freeze them out if they're not going to do it. Because if not, it's like, well, it's fine, but we're going to still have our series with Purdue and Michigan State and Wisconsin and Michigan and Penn. I mean, they're going to still get it. There's no downside. If there's no downside, there's no downside. There's no reason for them to sit there and do that. And I've been pretty clear, probably on the message board more so than on the chat, that at the end of the day, I don't really care if Notre Dame's in here or not. I think that Notre Dame creates the path to the 20-team league or the 24-team league or whatever the next iteration of what college football is going to look like is. So I think it's important. And it's important to a lot of people out there that it happens. But I mean, personally, it's like, you had your shot. You've had shots multiple times. I'm not going to, you can lead a horse to water, but I'm going to drown you. What? You've had your opportunity. Beat it. But I digress. Sage Ohio, half of me wants ND. The other half says why. Yeah. Hey, Devin, how's it going? Tater tot clips. Hello back. Ethan, you want my rib recipe? I do 3-2-1 method, and I've actually kind of shortened it. And I'll go through it quickly here because not everybody is into the grilling and smoking of delicious meats, and for those who aren't, I apologize. I think around 40, all men get to the point where it's either, they're either going to get really into, and I'm stealing somebody else's comment here. They either really get into like history of wars or smoking meats. And I like the History Channel, but there's just not a lot of documentaries on there that I haven't seen right now. So smoking meats. 3-2-1 method is generally, and there's some debate whether you go at 225, 250, or 275. You do 3 hours unwrapped. You generally use mustard as a binder. You put some seasonings on it. You put it in there. I generally let it ride an hour, and then every half hour up to the 3 hour mark, you hit it with a spritz of like apple cider vinegar, water, and apple juice, kind of equal parts. I've always kind of just eyeball it. I've taken that back down. If I'm going a little warmer, if I'm going 250 or 275, I've taken that down to like 2 hours or 2.5 hours. You bring it in, you keep it at the same temperature. You, in tinfoil, you create like a pocket of there. You put like squeezed butter, honey, and brown sugar. You put the meat side down on it. You wrap it, fold it. You put it back out there for 2 hours. You hit your internal temperature. Really, at that point, you're not putting any more color on it. You pull it out of there, and then like the last hour, if you're going to sauce it, a lot of people like dry, but if you're going to sauce it, you sauce it so it gets tacky. And it's the 3-2-1 method. I go about 2.5, 1.5, half, because I'm finding that I'm getting it to 203 degrees way too quick. And these, I thought, ended up being a little dry. I mean, 2 of the bones fell out before I even took it out. We're on the drip tray. So there you go. But email me and I'll give you some recipes, some sites that I go to. Tater tot clips. Ohio State getting crystal balls for Jason Moore, the talented defensive lineman out of DeMatha. Yeah, I think that they sit pretty. They sit pretty on that one. I like their opportunity, and the fact that a lot of them are moving in right now with them. I don't necessarily monitor the other networks, but I'm aware of what's going on. Makes me sound like something's going to happen here pretty soon. Let me mark where I'm at as I see a super chat is coming in, and per my rules, super chats moved to the front of the line. So Philip Pulio, am I the only one who's sick of Notre Dame's attitude? They've done nothing in forever. Let them join, and we blow their doors off for a year or once a year. Well, you won't get them once a year, because what's going to end up happening, unless they're in your pod or however we're going to do it, you're probably, the math changes with the amount of teams you're getting, and you're going to be playing teams that are not in your pod 2 out of every 6 years or something like that. I mean, there might be some, maybe Ohio State and Notre Dame end up in the same pod, but you're going to have Michigan in the same pod. Penn State's going to howl and scream because Penn State feels that Ohio State's its rival. Ohio State doesn't. So you're certainly going to be playing Notre Dame a lot more than you are currently, and that's with this schedule. I mean, you get them occasionally in the bowl game, and then you go back to what it was, 95, 96 for the last time that they played one another. So I'll tell you this. I mean, not that you need motivation, and not that by the time they would come on the schedule that a lot of the current players that are playing right now would still be there, but be a prima donna in this and see how well that works out for you. There's a lot of people that don't like Notre Dame. There are people that love Notre Dame, but there are a lot of people who don't like Notre Dame. And, a lot of people are like, oh, it's, if you're Catholic, I mean, my brother-in-law, my wife's sister's husband is like very, very Catholic. He does not like Notre Dame. I mean, granted, they're from Louisiana and, he's an LSU fan, but, it doesn't, just because you're Catholic doesn't mean that you like Notre Dame. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. There's a lot of times that you sit there and you just try to lump together a demographic and say that that's going to happen at that point. So I don't know. I'm still of the mindset that I'm just like, if Notre Dame doesn't want to end, don't keep chasing them. Don't keep chasing them. And I say that as somebody who chased things way too long in my life at various points. I mean, this girl, I think she's amazing. I chased a girl after high school for most of high school until I moved and, got really hung up, and I ended up talking to some other girl that I knew, 20 years after the fact. And she's like, why didn't you ever make a move basically with her? And she's like, it's because you were still into protecting the names of the innocent. We'll name her. And I was like, well, I was really into her, and she never really gave me the time of day. She's like, well, you blew it, son. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So you can only pursue Notre Dame for so long. And you know what? We could be doing this show at the end of the weekend. It could all be moot. They could have made a move at that point, one in or out. Or we could be talking about it in 4 weeks, or we could be talking about it in 4 months. But I think you need to put a finite cap on it and say you're in or you're out. Because there's certainly reports out there that the Big 12 is trying to poach a lot of these teams out of the Pac-12. And while there's a lot of debate on what the value of Washington and Oregon is, and Stanford to a certain extent, if they up and go somewhere else and sign deals, we're already looking at a case of having to break deals, but it's going to be really hard to break deals that are in wet ink still at that point. So I just think that writing until the end of time with Notre Dame is stupid. I just think it's stupid. Somebody just sent me a text message. He knows who he is. I don't know if I'm going to be able to look at it. I'm just not going to be able to look at it at this point. Let's see what else we got going on here. You see USC and UCLA playing some Big Ten home games in SoFi Stadium. I don't know. Why? You've got iconic stadiums. It's not like they're playing in some municipal dump. I think the Coliseum last time I was in it was dumpy, and I've been quickly reminded that they've thrown a lot of money at that building and that it's not nearly as dumpy as what I remember. So I don't know. Ohio State is certainly, it played a spring game in Cincinnati and has played a game up in Cleveland, and you have some of that stuff. But one of the things I'll say is, especially with UCLA, it's not like a case of where there's not a lot of stuff to do around the Rose Bowl. So it's not like moving a game from Ohio Stadium and the VC getting hosed, or Buffalo Wild Wings getting hosed, or some of these other places that are used to the football Saturday revenue. Sure, you're still going to have concessionaires and things that are going to end up getting kind of screwed in the deal, but it's a little different. I don't know. You play games off campus when you have to. I mean, neutral site games in terms of where you're bringing teams in from elsewhere. I mean, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense there, or if you're doing work on your stadium, like again the spring game that was held in Cincinnati at Paul Brown. I don't know why you would, off of the top of my head, other than the fact that SoFi is supposedly this great cathedral. I got a buddy who's a news photographer, sports photographer for one of the TV stations up in Cleveland, and we were talking, and he's like, "Dude, I've been to a lot of stadiums." I'm like, "I know you've been to a lot of stadiums." He's like, "It's by far and away, amazing." And I've always felt that way about Jerry World. I've been to the new stadium, Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. Not for a football game. I've covered some football camps there. It's really nice, but I'm told SoFi is just significantly better than everything else out there. But I don't know. I don't know why you move it out of a campus experience. And again, the Rose Bowl is not on the UCLA campus, but it's the Rose Bowl. It's the Rose Bowl. I would be angry if I had to go and cover a UCLA game at SoFi. I'd feel gypped of the opportunity to go to another game at the Rose Bowl. And I understand that the Rose Bowl is one thing versus the Rose Bowl to cover UCLA, but it's still the Rose Bowl. And, just inject that into my veins. I don't want to give that up. I'm just going to keep, scrolling. Anything on Cormani McClain, I don't see that happening at this point. The second he comes on to campus and visits, I'll start paying more attention at that point. I know I saw the same things, Tater Tot, that you did on social or whatever, but Bill Green is kind of our South Florida Express guy, and until he tells me that I need to start paying attention, I'm just really not paying attention. Now, I've been in the weeds all day, so if last Friday taught me anything, or Thursday, whatever it was, taught me anything, it's things can change instantly. So if something happened in the last 3 hours, I don't know. I'm not on Twitter at the moment. As I said, I did a show 3 hours ago. I'm going to mark where I'm at as another super chat's coming in. I'm really isolated at the moment. Let me jump to the super chat down here. Mike, thanks for the super chat. So the possibility of bigger conferences. Will the concept of divisions get a new life? Do we need to think of adding new schools in pairs to maintain division balance? Well, all right. Here are a couple things. The Big Ten, when it went to 11 games, I thought was the most insane thing, going just to 11. I mean, I understand that Penn State, it was early 90s. We were in a very different world at that point. But I think you have to stay in pairs. I don't think you need to have divisions, but you're going to have pods. And then I'm not exactly sure how you break things up at that point. Now, the thought might be, if you have 4 pods, you have A and B, and then you have C and D. I mean, do you have A and B listed on one list and C and D, and the winner of AB and the winner of CD go? Or do you still go to, is it still 1 and 2? I mean, how do those tie breaks work? I mean, if you get into bigger numbers, I mean, you're not even going to get close to playing a good number of the teams in the conference. So it certainly creates issues. But let's just say that the Pod A, let's go west to east, and Pod A is SC, UCLA, and let's say Oregon and Washington, and then let's just throw a 5th team in there, Stanford. I mean, we call it like the Pac-12 holdovers. Does that team get a pass of playing 4 games against Pac-12 opponents, something that people didn't really give that much of a crud about for years, because the Pac-12 kind of fell into obscurity? Do they get some sort of advantage in terms of that? Whereas you could potentially have a pod that's Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and then you could just put a couple blanks in there. Sorry, Rutgers. Sorry, Maryland. I'm just going to throw you guys in there. Throw a couple of blanks in there, but you're playing a much more difficult situation. I don't know if I want to put it to where If we're trying to fix the issues of divisions, I think you could make it significantly worse if you don't do it right. So I don't know. I'll throw back to you, Mike. And I know that we're talking, I mean, this is all football, and we're all thinking about football, but basketball, you play 20 league games, and everybody's like, oh my God, what a crucible. You're playing so many games. Holy hell. I mean, you got all these 2 plays and a bunch of 1 plays. Now if you're a 20-team league, you got 19 opponents. So you're going to get 1 2 play? You're going to get 1 2 play? Or a couple 2 plays? I mean, how are you going to do it? Are you going to have some teams that just don't appear on the schedule? I mean, it's tough. I mean, especially in a sport like that, it's tough to have a conference where you're not playing a lot of your conference. So, I don't know. I don't know what the secret sauce is going to be there. I'm going to see if we've had anything here. Sports Illustrated in the last 30 minutes, Big 12 and Deep Talks with 16. I've seen that. I think CBS had something as well. It's, great. Deep Talks are fantastic, and I'm not going against Dennis Dodd's sources or Pat Forty's sources, whoever's sources. I mean, I believe what they're saying to be the case, but, I still can believe that Washington and Oregon are dragging. I think they would like to see if the Big Ten's going to do anything. And what I had sent to me that I can't get to at this point, somebody who I listened to basically saying something about no leverage. So apparently he was either reading a tweet or he's on the show and watching the show. If you're watching the show, how are you doing? If it was the tweet, then you don't know that I'm talking about you at this point. So I don't know. Rumor is more interest in Stanford and Cal. That's interesting as I hit the microphone. I'm so excited about this. I'm flailing around like a crazy madman. I have zero interest in Cal from an athletic side, but I understand what goes into conference expansion. And I promised to get back to some previous comments. I kind of just went to where we are because I'm talking about what we're talking about now instead of going back to 20 minutes ago. The Big Ten Academic Alliance means the world, and those research dollars are huge. Oh, you're going to get $100 million a year for media rights. Oh, we're talking about billions with a B of dollars in research money and everything else and cooperatives when you sit there and you're adding the teams to the BTAA, formerly the CIC. And you're getting a lot with UCLA and USC. And then obviously Cal and Stanford are outrageous. And let's not forget that, we're talking about expansion that goes to the football field, to the basketball court, to the classroom, to the research laboratories. And there are a lot of people affiliated in the university structure that don't give 2 blanks about the athletic side of it. They care about the dollars in terms of running the universities and the research that's generated and the studies and papers that are written and the journals that you make and so on and so forth. So there is a lot to that. And I did notice that, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I don't remember seeing Cal or Stanford listed in the 6 teams that are there. I have a hard time believing that Phil Knight, and Phil Knight can want whatever he wants. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but Nike guru Phil Knight just saying, I'm fine with, wherever we end up or however that may look. Is an expanded Big 12 by putting those 6 teams in there suddenly on par with the other 2 conferences? I say no. The Big 12 had to go out and shop the group of 5 to fill in its numbers and even fatten up a little bit more after the departure of Texas and Oklahoma. So I don't know. I don't know if the Arizona schools and the Pacific Northwest schools and, with that, I'm leaving Wazoo, I'm leaving Oregon State off of there. Those are teams that are going to be on the island of misfit toys with Kansas, in my opinion, at some point. And putting Utah in there. And then you got to wonder about some vetoes or whatever. BYU and Utah hate each other. hate each other. And I know that BYU is still wearing its pledge pin at this point. Probably doesn't have a lot to say, but oof, I mean, that's going to be something. So I don't know. I see a lot of things coming in here. So let me kind of jump on this and I'll work my way back. I'm going to hit web security again. Can you help me with one thing? If all these teams leave and you have 3 or 4 scraps after the P12, wouldn't it just dissolve at that point? I don't get the people saying the scraps would add. Well, the thing is that at least at that point, if you have a point of where you have any sort of monies owed or whatever, isn't it better to have something of where you're trying to enforce penalties to send money to than to just say, oh, we've dissolved and there's nothing there? So there's something to that. But, I've seen Boise State. I've seen San Diego State. I mean, go to the WAC, go to the Mountain West. I mean, it's not that exciting, but I'm not all that excited about this Big 12 plus Pac-12 situation. I'm not going to go out of my way to watch Texas Tech, Utah. I'm not. And I think Utah's a fun team to watch. And I think in certain years, Texas Tech's a fun team to watch. But I'm not going to go out of my way when the Big Ten is going to have 16, 18, 20, 22, 24 teams or whatever and games in every window. I'm going to watch the Big Ten game 10 out of 10 times over anything. I mean, I'm trying to think of, Oklahoma State, an Oklahoma State team that's got an exciting offense going against Oregon. I think that could be fun. But there are not a lot of sexy matchups that are there. So I think that you could have all of these other conferences fill in, dissolve, reform, whatever you want, web security. They're not going to be that. It's not going to be that exciting to me when I'm going to be all about watching Big Ten and SEC. And that's kind of going to be where my attention is going to be. I think you could sit there and take the 3 Power 5 conferences that are going to be left. Even without picking anybody else off, saying that Cal and Stanford might not happen immediately, whatever's left, you could give me those 3 conferences and say, pick a 20-team conference out of there. Under a perfect storm, I think you could probably get to 20, and it's like, that's not that bad. But I guarantee you those 20 aren't going to be there once the bullies go in and say, well, we're taking what we want, especially with the ACC kind of being off limits with the grant of rights, even though there certainly are reports about, maybe Miami looking at seeing what it might take to get out of these deals. And that's not saying Miami saying, well, we're doing that based on we have an invite to this conference or that conference. I think that's more of Miami saying, hey, we're a pretty hot commodity right now. We got some smart people and some rich people too, and we're not going to be held to something. But, I don't know. The Stanford endowment is $38 billion. I mean, that money is crazy. I mean, that is crazy. That buys a lot of beakers. That buys a lot of Bunsen burners. That money buys a lot of whatever you need for whatever type of research or whatnot. You're in a different world at that point. And the BTAA has got buku bucks, but Stanford takes it into a different stratosphere at that point. And then I'm sure Cal's got something too. I mean, I saw something about the UCLA endowment, and I'm not exactly sure how that works and based on that versus being part of the UC system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of moving parts that I don't understand. I mean, I've certainly had time over the weekend, but I don't even know what I'm supposed to be focused on at this point. I don't know where I should be putting my attention. Oh, you need to be looking at this. Oh, you need to be looking at that. So you end up with a little bit of paralysis by analysis. I never really did a deep dive into that, but don't believe for a second that type of stuff, Sergeant Pickles, is not absolutely important and critical in terms of all of this. And, I say that to the same people who still are poo-pooing Rutgers and Maryland. Rutgers and Maryland opened up a lot of opportunities in terms of giving them New York and DC. Certainly opened up a lot of things in terms of what you're able to charge. And I'll get back into that one more time. and I'm sure I'm going to have to say this 1,000 more times, people are like, well, nobody's watching Rutgers in New York. It's not about who's watching. It's that everybody who is in New York, who is a cable household, now is getting charged 15x, 15x the carriage rate for BTN as an in footprint versus an out of footprint. A lot of households out there for 15x for a product that you were providing for a dime, and now you're providing for $1.50 a month or whatever. I mean, it's significant. LA, a lot of households in LA and San Diego, and the whatever. I don't know what some of the other split off DMAs. I think Palm Springs is a DMA. Maybe there's a San Bernardino DMA. I don't think so. But you got a lot of people who are going to suddenly become footprint. And again, it's not who's watching. You could sit there and be somebody who doesn't care about anything but, I don't know, cooking shows. You're still, if you belong to Big West Cable or something, Big West Cable is going to have to sit there and have $1.50 carriage rate on it, even for Joe Cooking Show. So, you got dollars there, and those dollars are much more funneled towards sports, whereas $38 billion is endowment and so on. I'm just scanning through. Yakov, Buckeye Scoop sends me out to LA to cover a game. Will you insist on a first class ticket? I don't insist on it. I'm not going to get it. They might ship me first class in the mail. I'm just happy I'm not being put on a train. I'd love to do the train out there, but I don't have a couple of days to do that. And I know I'd end up having to switch trains in Chicago at like 3 a.m. or something like that. Just make sure I have an aisle. Make sure I have an aisle and maybe some leg room. I'm just shy of 6'3" and all leg and beer belly. So it's flying can be a chore. Flying can be a little bit of a chore. Sergeant feels bad for his Wazoo friends. Yeah, it's tough. They're winners and losers in all of this. And Wazoo and Oregon State are not in a great position. It is what it is. There are a lot of West Virginia fans that are concerned about what all this means. I mean, certainly Kansas fans, they feel that their value is a lot higher than what anybody else out there feels. You can win 50 national championships in basketball, and you're still not really going to move the needle if you're a redundant television market and some of the other issues that are going on there. I don't know if I'm picking up something that's on fire at the point. Let me mark where I'm at because I have another super chat from Mike Palmer. Do I think Kim Wexler off of Better Call Saul will die? Hashtag no spoilers. I don't know anything, so I'm not speaking from there. So I'm just speculating. So anybody who's watching, if I happen to get this right, I'm not basing it on anything that I've seen. I think it would be too simple to kill her off. I think we're all expecting it. Never saw her in Breaking Bad. Haven't seen her on any of the Cinnabon flash forwards. So obviously she's got to be gone. I think that it's such a good show and so well written, so well thought out that would almost be lazy. Now, I think that there are 50 different scenarios of where she does run into an untimely end, and you're not going to be like, oh, wow, I feel cheated or horrible. But I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because it just feels like that's too neat. That's just, we all want to sit there and wrap up things in little tight, pretty bows and say that it's done. I can't wrap for squat, but I end up paying somebody at Macy's to do that. But we want to wrap it all up and have it to be all concise and everything else. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Somebody says she's running a Sbarro, yo. Oh, Hardy Jins, don't go changing on me. I love it. Let me kind of scroll back. Where are we sitting at the show? We're at 45 minutes. Let me reset here. You're watching the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have that. Be sure to hit the bell. All of that. It helps other people out there find all of our programming. Not only my show, but the other great shows on the channel, including Morning Scoop, Buckeye Weekly Podcast, Around the Oval, Gives in the Bank. A lot of stuff going on. So please do that. That helps us out. We have an interesting number of thumbs up on the channel right now. I'll just say nice at this point. I'm not sure if you're seeing the same number I am because there is a little bit of a lag. So if somebody hits it in the next minute, we'll be off of that. But I'm aware. I see it. Let me jump back up, see where I start. I don't even know where I'm at. And now we're at 72. So there you go. What's up, Chad W? Think Indy's a joke. Well, I just I think that there are a lot of people who were not alive in the 1940s who remember hearing about the old radio national broadcasts that they had and that they were the only game in town. Well, we're not there anymore. So you're not the only game in town. And while there's not going to be a program in the nation that's going to be like more people are favorable of them and then unfavorable of them, it's so, people love a team or hate a team and just it is what it is. But in some ways, I think that it's the amount of so many people hate Notre Dame is what makes it that much more appealing, because you sit there and you say, okay, you can watch Notre Dame versus another, whatever this Power 5 team is, or you can watch Wake Forest and UVA play. People are probably going to opt for the Notre Dame game, not because they like Notre Dame. They're just hoping that Notre Dame loses. So, you got that going on there. Let me see what's going on here. You got to do another show with that Brian guy for Notre Dame. Oh, when OSU flips Keon Keeley. Oh, Cameron, if Ohio State's able to get in Keon Keeley, I'm going to do that. But I'm going to do another show with a Notre Dame guy here at some point anyway, with Ryan Roberts. I just want to get a little bit closer to the season. Hopefully we have a little bit better working internet at that point. I still don't know why our morning or our Buckeye Weekly last week crapped out, why the internet was being so stupid. I'm chalking it up to some of these rolling blackouts that we're dealing with and that it was just something going on there. I just don't know at this point. Let me see what else is here. Nick, money is the ultimate catalyst. Notre Dame can be as stubborn as they want, but the fact is they'll benefit way more by joining the Big Ten. I think it's inevitable at this point. It's when, not if. Well, Nick, I'll say this. Win is win. I think that if Notre Dame thinks that it can go out and have a couple more years of sowing its wild oats before finally settling down and being a one conference man, I don't think that the patience is going to be there. I don't think we're unpacking this and that conferences are bringing on 2 new teams this year. And then there's a year where it's not happening. And then 2 more teams another year. And we're slowly, gradually seeing the move to super conferences. If you take the reports about what's happening with the 6 Pac-12 teams and the Big 12 at face value, again, I have no reason to say that those are bunk. I think maybe premature. I mean, maybe, exploratory, maybe being oversold a little bit, but I'm not saying that that's being done in a deceitful, dishonest way. But if all of that's happening, you can't sit there and drag it out. I mean, and if anybody's going to sit there and drag it out, I could see the Big Ten doing that. I could see them being misguided in how they're doing that. If Notre Dame's like, well, we don't have to decide. We're not going to decide until we have to. Oh, don't worry, take your time. Stop doing that. Put their feet to the fire. The worst thing that can happen is that they say no, and then everybody just gets on with their lives. And that's not the worst thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world. Got another super chat coming in here. Let me find that. Scrolling all the way to the bottom. Any recruiting nuggets to share? Well, I think that we're coming out of a big weekend for other programs. Ohio State was hoping to get Darren Reed, the defensive lineman out of Columbus, Georgia. He ended up being part of a huge recruiting weekend for LSU. That one was a little nutso because we kind of already knew what Reed was going to say about Ohio State if he went to Ohio State. Lo and behold, he doesn't go to Ohio State. Darren Reed and I talked about me potentially going down there and doing, putting his announcement up live. That kind of fell apart, but that fell apart more of a matter of it just, I didn't want to drive with gas prices. I didn't want to drive down to Columbus, Georgia. And even if I flew into Atlanta, I still have to rent a car and then go 2 hours each way. So, and I just really didn't want to be away on the 4th if I can avoid it. I miss so many other holidays with bowl games and everything else that if I can avoid being gone on a national big holiday, I try to, or at least if I can spend it with my family. Um, but certainly we talked about Jason Moore getting a lot of crystal balls from one of the other networks. I think that's in the offing. I think that's something that could happen sooner term. I think there's a lot of mixed information out there right now on that quarterback, Austin Novosad. I'm hearing from one side that they think that A&M is kind of out and it's Baylor, Ohio State, and then on another side it's Baylor and A&M with Ohio State out. So I don't think anybody knows what's going on with Austin Novosad. Not really any clearer with what the 23 quarterback situation is going to look like for Ohio State. Still feeling really good about Ohio State getting Jeremiah Smith, receiver out of South Florida, for 24. I try to defer some of that stuff to our recruiting shows. Maybe I'll try and once I get back from vacation, I'll try and get Alex Lightman on. I've done his show before. He'll have him on my show. We'll kind of see where we go from there. A lot of talk about what 23 is going to be. People concerned Notre Dame has retaken the number 1 spot in terms of recruiting classes, and I tell people to relax. Notre Dame also has a couple more kids than Ohio State. Ohio State's going to get to at least 25, in my opinion. So the formula and the math's going to be there. There's not a doubt in my mind Ohio State is going to finish with a higher ranked class across the board than Notre Dame. And that's not taking anything away from Notre Dame's class, which I think is pretty darn good. But I just really believe that Ohio State's class is going to be significantly better, and it's going to be in some order: Ohio State, Alabama, UGA. Those are going to kind of be your top 3 teams. Let me jump back in here and see what's going on. NCAA has a rule you have to have 7 teams for a conference. Rules were meant to be changed. The NC2A really works for the teams, for the conferences, so we'll see what happens there. Bad precedent for dropping programs when better ones come along. I've seen a lot of this. People talking about, oh, well, you could dump Maryland and Rutgers and do this. That's just such a horrible idea. It's such a horrible idea. I understand the sentiment and everything else, and you can't take them all. And we see it in recruiting sometimes, of where a kid suddenly at the last minute is like, I think I got better options, and that better option ends up being a school of less prestige, and you kind of wonder what happened there. It's just I don't like it. I think it's a horrible idea, and I guarantee you, when conference expansion is not solely about athletics, more so it's not solely about football, that people saying that they should do that just are not seeing the forest for the trees. And that's fine, because we all focus on football. That's where, if it wasn't for college football, I'd be talking to myself. Honestly, I would probably be working in business. I would have not gotten into journalism. I'd be doing something else. But, damn you, football. I could have been making more money somewhere else. But no, you just don't do that. You don't drop teams at this point. We all like to talk about the frustration with teams that just don't perform, and relegation and everything else. I could come up and make a proposal of how you have relegation, but I think what you need to do is you need to have like a sister group of 5 league or whatever, that, like the Big Tens would be like the MAC, and that, the MAC is shares certain aspects with the Big Ten. Because what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and relegate a team and say, well, now you're out, and all that money, all that research money and everything else that you're involved in, and this research that you're doing in conjunction with these other 6 schools, well, just turn in your notes in GTFO? No, it doesn't work like that. So yeah. Yeah, Sarah, I agree. It would be brutal. It's such a non-starter that I probably have said more there than I will about it moving forward. It's not going to happen. If a team leaves the Big Ten, it's because the team decided to leave the Big Ten. And with $100 million payoff or whatever per year on the media rights and the offing, it would have to be for some very extenuating circumstances why somebody would give up on that. You'd almost have to be giving up on your athletics at that point. But expansion is not just about football. It's not just about that. There's so much about conference membership and affiliation that is outside of it. And the reality is that Rutgers football is actually getting a little bit better than what it was. I mean, which is just sadly just talks about the low world that it was in. If Greg Schiano could start putting together a couple of classes where it's keeping guys home, you know, they could be actually pretty mediocre. But it's a zero-sum game. You sit there and you play against all these teams, and if you're going to have teams that are going to go 12-0, 11-1, you're conversely are going to have other teams that are going to be dropping games and dropping a number of games. It's not like, oh, well, we're a conference and nobody had more than 3 losses. The math doesn't work. It's a zero-sum game. 10-team up or 10-team lower division Big Ten with promotion relegation, make the money split work. Still will never happen. Yeah, it's messy. It's really, really messy to try and do something like that. So, I mean, and it's already so cutthroat in a lot of ways. I don't like it. Do you really want to sit there and have a 12-game schedule where all 12 games you are getting pushed to the nth degree? Because I guarantee you the SEC, unless it has to, is not walking away from Chicken Bleep weekend where everybody's playing Furman and, you know, whoever, Northeast Louisiana and Tupelo Barber College and whatever. They're not going to do that. So why do you sit there and want to run off teams that actually provide you a moment of being able to come up for breath? We'll use Rutgers as an example, and I don't think it's a fair example to use them as a punching bag, but what have they done to you? What is their existence done to you to outrage you to the point, and I'm not saying this to anybody, I swear, I'm not saying this to anybody, I'm saying it in general, and I'm maybe getting a little vitriol because I've had to answer this a lot, not even this week, just through the months and years. What is their existence taking away from you? Just if you remove them, it's not suddenly that you're going to be able to put the 85 Bears on the schedule. That's not how it works. So I don't know why it's such an affront to God in your eyes to have Rutgers in the league, especially when Rutgers' sheer existence creates wealth and money for the universities to be able to do business. So, I'm done with that one. I'm done with that. /end. I'm not going to say anything else more on that one. I'm going to scroll through a little bit more. We are at 58 minutes, so we're getting toward the end. I don't think that I'm going to have to worry about my contractors yet. My wife is not texting me to tell me to shut up and go answer the door. 272 people on the line right now, 89 thumbs up. That's a great number. Thank you, everybody, for that. Thank you, everybody who's been on. I'm going to try and do one more live show this week. I'm not going to be live next week. If I'm live, it's because something major happens. And if I'm live, I'm going to be doing it live from Jamaica. So if I show up live, it's got to be something pretty big in terms of conference expansion or wherever the heck it is that we sit at that point. But my goal next week is to be on the beach or at the pool with a couple of Superman drinks and not really thinking too much about work, but we'll see. But I do want to go live one more time this week. I'm finding that going live is creating a little bit better viewership, and I hope that carries over into when I start doing more tape shows. My goal would be, once we get into football season, going 3 times a week, maybe live twice and taped once. We'll start bringing guests back on here too once we get closer to the season. All sorts of good things. But again, this is your show, everybody. I want you guys to feel like you can help me program it. If it wasn't for you, I'd be talking to myself, or I'd be talking to the cat or the dog. So you tell me what you want. I'm not going to be able to provide everything. I certainly get asked questions that there are no answers for it. I mean, there isn't an answer, or it's something I can't get into because for whatever reason. But, I want you guys to feel ownership in this show. Something else that's coming up too, as I'm scrolling through, and then I'll make one final run on questions, is I'm going to create a Discord channel that is going to work for both this show and my other show. In there, you will be able to reach out. Nose is itching. You'll be able to reach out to me and bring up show suggestions. Maybe I can keep you up to date on show schedules. Just a chance to really keep this community going. Obviously, going to try and drive people over to Buckeye Scoop. This is not something to keep you from there, but it's just, think of it as a companion. You sit there and you watch The Walking Dead, and then you have to watch the show after where we talk about what you just watched on The Walking Dead. The Discord channel is going to be that. I will start getting that posted in the descriptions probably after vacation. Honestly, I thought about trying to get it up this week, but didn't end up happening. Let me get to a super chat that I got in here from Philip Julio. The worst thing that can happen to Michigan, he's running them into the ground. No more 10-win seasons for them. Rutgers is on a better trajectory. You sit there and you take some of these games that you view as easy wins. I mean, it certainly does cut into people's win totals. Now, I think Rutgers is going to come around a little bit. I still think that Rutgers high water mark is 8-4. And that's not even putting USC and UCLA in the mix. We don't know what the conference is going to look like. So when you don't know what you don't know, I mean, you're best not to give a hard, fast answer. But I think Rutgers could be a 6-6 team. I think it really can. I think Rutgers could still win 3 or 4 league games. I mean, I think that they can get there. People are being very quick to sell on what Greg Schiano's been able to do there here in terms of trying to turn things around. I mean, they've been having to do a lot of stuff with transfers and everything else. And, while transfers have worked well for Mel Tucker, I mean, there's a lot of people that are so much higher on Mel Tucker. And I'm not saying I'm not high on him, but I saw like a graphic put out by Mike Farrell, who I used to work with at Rivals, and Mike's a friend, so I'm not bagging on him. But he was talking about recent coaching hires, the best recent coaching hires, and he had Sam Pittman at Arkansas as 1, Mel Tucker at Michigan State as 2, and then Ryan Day at Ohio State as 3. And you can make the argument of Ryan Day inherited what he did, and he was an assistant there, and so on and so forth, and that's all well and good. But what are your parameters? What are the criteria that you're determining there? And how is Mel Tucker there after a year? I mean, I guess it's a year. Was it 2? I don't even know. I mean, he went out and he got himself some solid 1-year transfers, but we haven't seen a single step of what they have in terms of building their program. And you're going to have certain programs that are going to have to do things more based on transfers. It is what it is. But under Mark D'Antonio, we certainly saw a Michigan State team that was able to self-sustain itself. The hope would be that Mel Tucker would be able to get them there too. But the thought of Mel Tucker being ahead of Ryan Day on that list, I mean, it feels really foreign to me. It just doesn't compute. And you know what? We may look back at this in a couple years and they might win. They might have a couple of 10-win seasons, and they'll be like, well, Noon, you really airballed on that one. And I'll be the first to admit it. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. I'm married. I've learned to admit when I'm wrong, even when I'm not wrong. So I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong on this one. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Jamaica. It'll be nice. Doing it all on points, more or less. Doing this trip for less than $750 a week, all inclusive with my wife. So, hate spending the money, but I'm not spending a lot of it there. If you're not a Buckeye fan, there's a lot of jealous hate. I hear you there. Some talk here about Clemson. I've seen some people talking about Clemson going to the Big Ten. That just doesn't make sense. There's no TV market there worth a damn. It's not like you're going to suddenly get Charlotte because of Clemson. You're not. I don't think that they're in the AAU. I mean, I could see Clemson wanting. I mean, I could see these ACC teams wanting to run quickly away from the conference if it feels like it's falling apart. I mean, I already called the ACC a 900, or a 1,000-pound anchor on them. That these other conferences are going to be growing and expanding, and you're going to be stuck in a grant of rights to 36. I'm calling my shot now. There's not a chance that grant of rights is enforced to 36. I don't think that grant of rights is enforced through 26. I think within 12 months we're going to see the first real legal challenge on it, like legitimate, not a trial balloon or something else. The stakes are too high, and if you just sit there and wait, I mean, you either play the ball or the ball plays you. You got to play the ball here. You can't you can't sit there and get a bad hop and hit you in the throat or the nuts. And they're going to get hit in the nuts on this one if they don't do something. So there you go. I think we kind of jumped through a lot of the things. I certainly have hit my super chats. I want to thank everybody who has donated with the super chat. Means a lot. Certainly helps out the channel. I want to thank everybody who's been part of this show. We got close to 300, I think, in terms of concurrence. And I know we'll get a lot of people who will watch it after the fact. I will get this onto the podcasting channel as well shortly after the show is over. I want to invite everybody to listen to my other show as well, the Best Noon Sports Show period, which is on my other channel. I'll start cross promoting them a little bit more in the comments once I get back from vacation. Pick the worst time in the world to sit there and start a new show right before vacation. But if it wasn't screwed up, it wouldn't be me. So, sorry. That's just kind of how I roll on that. But until then, I'm Kevin Noon. This is the Big Me Kickoff. I want to thank everybody for being part of this. And we will get back together later this week.